Hey, right on, my friends. It's Chris here. I hope everybody's having a fantastic now. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about, maybe a little bit more of what I talked about last time, and that was the power of our belief systems, the power of our intentional thinking. I talked last time about how when, we could intentionally try to change something around us with our thoughts, and is that even real? And I think we would all agree that it is. And so today I wanted to expand on that a little bit, but talking about really us, our own belief system about us and how powerful that absolutely is. And I see it every day when I am in one of the roles that I have in my professional life is that I am a private practice therapist. I'm actually sitting in my office right now. And people come into my office every day, tremendously courageous people come into my office every day, and they want to change their lives. They want to change their lives for the better. And so I'm always having a first session, obviously, with new people. And a situation happened a few months ago with a gentleman that came into my office. And like all my first sessions, I tend to sit down and introduce myself. And I tell them a little bit about myself first, because I think it's really important that people get a sense of kind of who I am and the direction that is probably going to go working with me. And so then I always ask, okay, so tell me a little bit about you. And this gentleman started right out of the gates by telling me that I am an addict, I am PTSD, I am ADHD, and proceeded to give me a couple more acronyms. And he's continuing to go on and continuing to go on. And he stopped and he kind of said to me, "Aren't you going to write any of this down?" I said, "No, not yet, because I know you'll tell me this again, so I'll hear it again." And then so I said to him, I said, "I just want you to stop for just a second, though." And I said, "Has anybody ever diagnosed you as an H.B.I.P?" He kind of looked at me quizzically and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "H.B.I.P." He goes, "No, what is that?" And I said, "Well, H.B.I.P. is that I believe you are a human being with infinite potential." And he kind of looked at me like, "I've never heard that before. Nobody's ever told me anything like that before." And this gentleman was in his, late 40s kind of a thing. And I said, "That doesn't surprise me." So all those other acronyms that he was using were coming out of this little manual right here. This is a thing that I have to use in my practice. Well, they tell me I have to use. I don't really. It's a diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. Now, this is a DSM-4. This is outdated because there's actually a new Bible of disorders floating around out there called the DSM-5. And what this is this is hundreds of codes of mental disorders that people get diagnosed with. Now, there's a couple reasons why we have this. One is primarily so the insurance companies will pay for therapy. They have to make sure that you are diagnostically necessary to receive services, so they have to give them a code. And it's a nice way of bracketing symptoms, if you will, or what person is experiencing. And that's the key here, is that what is the experience that you're having? But that gets lost in the translation, if you will. Because what ends up happening, and this happens with children in school very early, is that as soon as that label gets put on somebody, there is the real risk that person is going to identify themselves with that label. And then pretty soon they are describing themselves as that disorder. And so now all of a sudden, there's a built-in, if you will, and I'm saying this with absolute compassion, there's a built-in excuse system for that person to not succeed, to not grow, to not have the experiences that they may want to have, because if they try and fail, well, it's because I am this. Instead of embracing the idea that you are a human being with infinite potential and that the experience you're having right now may not be the best one you're having. So let's take a look at that and do what you can to change it. So I laid all this on this guy, and he kind of looked at me. He's like, I don't know what to say. I don't even understand. So I used another example for him. And I wanted to share a story with him of a colleague of mine that I've talked about before. His name is Howard Myers. He's my mentor. For those that are tuning in for the first time, Howard is a 74-year-old blinded Vietnam veteran whose eyes were blown out by a landmine in 1967. So he came back And he had to start all over again as a 20-year-old blinded man. And one of the first things that he was told was he was disabled. And he made a decision early on that he was going to refuse to identify himself as a disabled human. So he wanted to do whatever it took to be successful and to continue to do the things that he wanted to do. So within a very short period of time, he was hired by Mass Mutual Insurance Company, and he was kicking butt. I mean, as a blind dude, this guy's out just racking up and selling and serving and servicing people. And all of a sudden, he's the number 2 insurance salesman in the United States of America. And so at one point, he loves to tell this story that, he got this letter when he was working. And in that letter was from the Department of Health and Human Services notifying Howard that he was no longer disabled, that he was making too much money. And he instantly got really upset. He's like, how dare they? I'm not disabled. I gave my eyes. And his mentor at the time, Denny Floden, simply said to him, well, Howard, are you? And he realized in that moment he wasn't disabled. Now, that doesn't mean that he denies the fact he doesn't have any eyeballs. Of course he does. He can't deny that. But his experience was that of being successful. So to me, that's the key here, right? His absolute intention and his decision and choice not to identify himself with his experience allowed him to create the experiences that he truly wanted to have. And I think that's the key for all of us. And I believe it starts every single day. And for me, it's as simple as when I wake up in the morning and I see that amazing sunrise, and I step back and I say, oh my God, the magnificence of that sunrise and the fact that we are absolutely perfectly positioned from that big burning fireball in the universe. It doesn't burn our asses up, right? If I'm just right about it, I can get a cool color on my skin, right? That is infinite potential. And if I'm in that universe, that same thing has to apply to me. And that gets me stoked every single day to go out and try to create the kind of experience I want to have for myself. And not only that, share that idea with others. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today, because I'm telling you right now, people, every one of you who's going to take the 7 or 8 minutes out of your life to watch this, I hope you believe that you are a human being with infinite potential, because you truly are. And once we believe that, and we start doing the things that go along with that, as opposed to doing the things that might fall in line with something in here, our lives are going to begin to change. That doesn't mean it's all unicorns and frickin' gumdrops and licorice, baby, because it's not. It requires work, and there's going to be setbacks, but that's all part of the gig. That's all part of this awesome journey. So I wanted to share that with all of you today. Remind yourself, you are a human being with infinite potential, and that potentiality is driven by love and compassion. So that's what I wanted to share with you all today. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your now. Peace. Much love.